Shoot. I'm good to go.
My name is Ty Winker. We're here at Ball State University. Today is November 8th, and we are interviewing Sergeant Heath Hayes, on his military experience and life. How are you doing today, Sergeant Hayes?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Good, good. How would you be able to spell your last name for me?
Yes, Hayes.
And you were born?
April 16th, 1984.
And where were you born?
Brazil, Indiana, Clay County.
And could you describe your upbringing, your childhood in Brazil, Indiana?
Briefly, or you want the long drawn out version? No. Well, I was born in Clay County, and I lived in several different houses, smaller residence. My mom, single mother, she raised me and my sister, and pretty much growing up I was with family a lot. Like, it's a real tight-knit family. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, I've been lucky enough to have all my great-grandparents just until, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago when my first great-grandpa died. But I still have 3 of my great-grandparents. And I've been real lucky for that. And they were a huge part in my upbringing. You know, I got to experience being raised by people that, survived the Great Depression and World War II vet, a couple of them. And I guess it wouldn't be a real rough life upbringing because I was kind of spoiled to an extent, I guess you could say. Like, I didn't have a silver spoon, but I always had somebody to watch over me. Like, somebody was always there to help me out. I always had dinner on the table, So that was real good. And if there wasn't, I never saw it. Like, my mom did a really good job of, hiding the bad stuff, I guess you could say, which was awesome. And it wasn't until later on in life whenever I figured a lot of stuff out. But I moved around a lot in Brazil, a couple different places. It was always close to family because my family's half of that town. And I even had to, be careful and ask my mom who to date when I was little because I didn't know if it was my cousin or not because of different names and marriages. So I was always close to family, within a few houses distance. And then went to 2 different elementary schools in Brazil. And then I moved to Terre Haute. And we moved over there. I went to school at a Warren Elementary School. I don't even think it exists anymore. But it was really different. Like, I went from a country living to Terre Haute, which was actually really bad around that time. And it had a really bad reputation for, methamphetamines and drugs and craziness. And my mother's boyfriend at that time was a cop. So I would go to school feeling, eerie, because none of the kids really liked me because I was a cop's kid, But then after that, we went to Greencastle, Indiana. And that's where I went to elementary school, middle school, and then on up to high school. I graduated from Greencastle, Indiana, which is all right there. Terre Haute, Brazil, Greencastle, it was all right there in that belt. So I was always within an arm's reach of family. So that's pretty much my upbringing to high school. And there are countless stories that go along with that. So.
And you mentioned having World War II vets in your family.
Mm-hmm.
And did they influence you at all in your decision to eventually join the military?
Yes, but I didn't realize it until later on in life. Like my great-grandpa, Cecil Wayne Green, everybody called him Poppy. He was pretty much like my dad growing up. He pretty much taught me everything. We'd always go fishing and stuff. And he would always hint to me on how to shoot a rifle. He'd be like, you got to hold it like this, and you got to breathe out. And I never paid a lick of attention to it because, didn't plan on going to the Army. Was not even thinking about it. But growing up, I played with toy guns a lot. Always had G.I. Joes. Always wanted to dress up in camouflage, be out in the woods, and always have the reenactments of movies and stuff. I was always around weaponry, and I kind of knew it, I guess, deep down inside, but didn't realize it until later on in life. Because there was a lot of different points in my high school, age group that I switched over. Heck, you could consider me a liberal hippie at one time, I guess. I don't know. I had long hair, and I wore tie-dye. stereotyped, right? But, and then after that, my best friend, Justin Downing, went to the Army not too long after high school, and I freaking hated him for it. Like, I was like, no, don't go. You're going to go to freaking Iraq and fight for nothing, blah, blah. And 2 years later, I joined the Army. So, like so much happens to people's perspectives, I guess, during that time frame. Like, that's the time where people are really learning on what they want to do. So when I was little, all those influences were actually influencing me, but I didn't realize it until later on in life, which is kind of cool to think back on.
Now, you enlisted on your 24th birthday,
Yep.
correct? Is there any significance to that? It is just...
Yeah, there is, but there is and there isn't. I had a girlfriend at that time, and I was on a downhill spiral. Like, I was not really in trouble with the law, but I was a bad influence, and I was a troublemaker. But I never really got caught. Thank goodness. But I was going on the wrong path, and I knew that if I didn't do something drastic and like really dramatic, that it was going to take a turn for the worse. Eventually, it would catch back up to me. So I was like, I got to do something. I got to change. And I used to be a car salesman. So I used to sell cars at Sycamore Chevy in Terre Haute, and this guy would always come in and buy cars every year. His name's Sergeant Braxton Smallwood. He was my recruiter. And I just, on a whim one day, I saw him, and I was like, hey, tell me something about the Army. And he's like, jumped on it. You know, I was perfect prey for him, you know. So he jumped on it and just started telling me all this stuff. And he's like, you know what? We could have you out the door in a couple weeks. And I'm like, I don't know if we can go that soon, you know. That's pretty quick. And he's like, well, go talk to your parents about it, you know, and think about it for a little bit. And I'm like, okay. So I went home and told Mom. Yeah, bad idea. I was like, Mom, I've been thinking about going to the Army. No. You know, starts crying right away. And I'm like, I've just been thinking about it. And then I started explaining to her. I was like, I'm in this position now, and if I stay doing what I'm doing, I'm going to get in trouble or not be around much longer. You know, I was heading down that way. And she's like, okay. And like the next day, straight down to the recruiter's office, he's like, this is what you got to do. I can have you out the door in 2 weeks. Where do I sign? You know, signed him up. He's like, you're going to be going up to MEPS in 2 weeks, and you'll be getting on a bus from there and going. And I was like, all right. So I went home and told Mom about it. She wasn't real happy. Of course, she was crying the entire time. But that 2-week mark fell on the day before my birthday. And I was like, it's a sign. Like, it's something that just happened to fall into place. Coincidence maybe, but like, I just think that it was meant to be that way, kind of. So, which I got a really cool story to tell you, kind of caveat off that. I wish I would have brought it along, but you want me to go ahead and you want me to tell you that story? All right, so my great-grandpa, Cecil Wayne Green, right, when he passed away, well, before he passed away, he would go to church at Bethel United Methodist Church, and he would hand out quarters to the kids to put in the offering. So everybody knew him as like the quarter guy. He would give quarters to the kids to go up. So when he died, instead of having a bouquet of flowers, the church got all the kids together and they put little quarters on stems and made a bouquet of flowers out of quarters, right? So all the grandkids and the great-grandkids all got one of the quarters off the flowers. Well, I wasn't going to carry it around. You know, I wanted to keep it, but I didn't want to just have a quarter on a stem. So I peeled it off with a duct tape / glue / whatever, gum or whatever they stuck it on there with, and I shoved it in my wallet. And I had it in there for the better part of 2 or 3 years in this crusty old leather wallet. And when I decided to go to the Army, I was like, I got to get a new wallet, you know, because this one's getting ready to fall apart. And so I got a new one, and I peeled that quarter out of there. It had been in there so long it had like glued itself to the leather. So I peeled it out of there, and on the front of it was Washington's head, and on the back of it was where all the glue and stuff was, so you couldn't see the back of it. And I was like, I want to take this with me. And my mom, she's a dental technician. She does false teeth, and I said, works with acrylic. She was like, I'll put it in acrylic and then drill a hole in it so you can put it on a necklace, because she didn't want to put a hole in the quarter itself. And I was like, okay. Well, she brings it back to me the next day after she gets off work, and it's a Missouri state quarter. And that was where I ended up going to basic training and where I've been the past 3.5 years of my life. So it was one of the Missouri state quarters, and I have it on acrylic. And I just kind of think that, it's just weird coincidences happen that, I don't know. I'm not a real spiritual guy, but I know that my great-grandpa, he's touching base. So I thought that was a pretty cool story.
So after your 24th birthday, you joined up.
Yep.
You went to basic. Where did you do your basic training at?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Fort Lost in the Woods. Yeah, they took me down there. It was springtime, so it was nice. I got lucky that I didn't have to go through basic training during the winter in Missouri. But it rained a lot, and it was cold in the mornings, hot in the days. Yeah.
You weren't old, but you were older for basic training.
Yeah.
A typical basic trainee. How do you think that affected your treatment by your drill instructors and by your fellow cadets?
Well, the drill sergeants didn't even really know me, because I really am glad that I didn't join until later. I wish I would have straight out, because I could be a lot farther now, but I wouldn't change anything for the world, because whenever I went through, I had a lot better understanding of what it meant to shut up, and what it meant to not get in trouble, because it makes your life harder, So I was always that one that would do the right thing and let everybody else know. I wasn't really a jerk about it, but I don't know, I guess some people didn't like me. I got selected while in basic training for the AMP program, which it's no longer in existence, but it was the Accelerated Military Police. And what they did was they selected, I think it was 12 guys and 1 female out of the entire company to be in the AMP program, which all it was they didn't train with the regular company. They would jump around to different training companies wherever their training was, and it accelerated basic training by a month. It might have been like 2 or 3 weeks, but I graduated like a month earlier than the other basic trainees that were in there, and it was just constant, and it needed to stay around, in my opinion. I think it needs to be brought back, but because it made you train hard, and it didn't give you as much downtime. So like you trained hard, and then we were at our unit a month before everybody else, so we got through it a lot quicker, I guess you could say, but at the same training. It was really cool.
And so what did your military police training entail? So you didn't do AT then?
Yeah, we did AIT. It was part of the program.
Well, while you were in basic?
It was OSET training, one station unit training. We did basic training, we had a little graduation ceremony, and then the next day we were right in AIT. Didn't change company, didn't go anywhere else, like we were still in the same place. So it was real quick.
What did it entail besides your basic training? What did your AIT entail? What did they teach you about being a military policeman?
Military police training literally was a crash course in law enforcement and interpersonal skill. Well, actually law enforcement in general, because it's really similar to a police academy, I guess you could say. We went over interpersonal skills, rules of engagement, escalation of force, detainee operations, on top of just getting out of basic training. And we're soldiers first, but we're MPs, so we're like held to the highest standard. Like if an MP screws up, you're a cop. You're looked at as to be the standard. So they always were attention to detail, because like if you're not on your game, everybody knows. If a soldier messes up, big deal. If an MP soldier messes up, it's all over the place. It's like a cop. You look at those people to be your go-to guy or gal. So it went over a lot of, I guess you could say, it was a lot of classroom training. It was a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of step-by-step training. And then once you would do this classroom portion, then you would go out and do the hands-on. So like they made sure it was a go or no-go. Either you could do it or you couldn't. So it was pretty...
Did you know a lot of people that failed out, that didn't make it?
Not really, because we were separated from most of the company, so we never really got to see that part of it. That was the beauty of being that little group that just went to the training. You didn't really get to see the end results of everybody else in the big consensus. But So.
And then maybe if you let me backtrack just a little bit to like the effect of September 11th on your idea of joining. You joined basically in a time where there was going to be a deployment. You were going to be deployed to a combat zone. How did that play into signing up?
Well, September 11th, I was in I think my sophomore year. Yeah, it would have been my sophomore year. I was in English class, and I saw it on the TV. Of course, they put it up on the TVs. And at that point in time, I really didn't care that much. I was pretty, I'm not going to say self-centered, but I was so young in my mind that I knew it was a disaster, but it didn't really affect me personally because I didn't have any ties to anybody in the military at that time, anybody in the airline industry. I was in that small town that just watched it on TV, and I was like, well, this means a lot because obviously we're going to go to war now, and a lot of people just died on our own in our own country, and it was a big deal, but I didn't understand it. I wasn't into school that much. I was there because I had to be there. I didn't enjoy it. If I could go back and do it all over again with this mentality, I may be a genius. I don't know. But if I knew then what I know now, it'd be totally different. But as far as 9/11 has been an effect on me joining the military, I didn't join until 2008. So that was 7 years after it happened. And I knew that I would possibly deploy, which I kind of wanted to. I wanted to get that adrenaline junkie type. I've always been that real outgoing, wanting to do the crazy stuff. And after hearing my buddy come, he was in Kuwait, which his first deployment, he was there for 18 months, I think it was, in Kuwait. And he hated it because, 18 months being away from your family, And I wasn't really looking forward to that. I wanted to go to Afghanistan. But you don't get to choose where you go, you get put in a company. But I enlisted knowing that I would deploy. And I guess I really just didn't care. I just wanted to go. I wanted to get out, and I wanted to make that big change. And I don't want to sound selfish, and I just wanted to do it for me, but I wanted to do it for everybody around me and for what potential, I guess, I recognized in myself. Because I just got married. I want to have a kid, and I wouldn't have wanted to have a kid being who I was back then. So I was doing it more for the people around me and what it meant. So as far as 9/11, I don't really know, Disastrous. Nobody should ever have to live with anything like that, and nobody should ever have to go through anything like that. But as far as its effect on me, I feel sympathy for everybody involved, but it did not really have an effect on me joining the military in that aspect, because I knew that I was going to deploy because we were at war. So, and it was 7 years after the fact. If it would have had that great of an effect on me, I would have joined straight out of high school, and I wasn't in that mindset during then. So.
Well, after you did your AIT and you had about a year of downtime before you deployed to Iraq.
I wouldn't go as far as saying it was downtime, but yeah, dwell time, garrison, yes. Yeah, it was about a year.
What did that year entail? What were your responsibilities and preparations?
We did. See, the thing about being an MP is it's not military police anymore. It's multi-purpose. You are used for everything. We do law enforcement. We do details and taskings. I was involved in law and order. As soon as I got out of AIT, we were involved in law and order, which meant policing Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and domestic disturbances, law enforcement, traffic operations. Pulling people over and writing speeding tickets. So that was just a total flip from what I was before I went into the Army. You know, I was usually the one getting speeding tickets, and now here I am writing them. I feel like a hypocrite. But I was on a funeral detail, and that was tough because we weren't the notifiers. We weren't on notification. Like, we didn't have to go to their house and initially notify a family member that there had been a death in the family. But we were the funeral detail that does the 21-gun salute, the flag, the casket, that kind of stuff. And we did a couple of them for veterans that from like World War II and Korean War and stuff first. And those weren't so bad because those people had lived, you know, past that, and they had lived their lives to the fullest. You know, they were older. But we had to do one, a specialist suite in Springfield, Illinois. We actually had to go to the airport and take his casket off of the airplane and carry it to the hearse and then stay overnight and then go and do the actual ceremony at the funeral home and at the gravesite. And that was a really rough time. And that's something that, as an MP, I was never trained for. But it was definitely something that I think all soldiers should experience. Because that was rough. But that was part of our training, I guess you could say. Because nobody wants to come home in a casket. And you don't want any of your friends to come home in a casket. So you either train hard and you train right, or that's what happens. You know, I mean, in casualties of war, things do happen. But the whole time that we were in transition between AIT and deploying, we were training for combat operations as well. It's called green cycle training. And that's where we literally run convoy operations on makeshift fobs and stuff on Fort Leonard Wood and do gate traffic control points, go out and run missions where you have to secure an objective, do convoy operations where you're front and trail of the vehicles and you're taking them down unsecure routes and you have to post security everywhere. And that's one of the main functions of MPs is area security, convoy security, and security in general. Like, because soldiers look for MPs. I wouldn't say that. We police our own. Okay? So we train for an entire year on just so many different things. I can't even say them all because I can't remember them all because we trained on so many different things. And a lot of it's underlying. Things that you don't think about, like funeral detail, that's just underlying training because you see that and it makes you think harder whenever you do the physical training, you know, because you're like, we ain't coming back in a casket, you know, we're doing it the right way, seeing what happens. So.
Well, could you describe your feelings leading up to your deployment, and then once you were notified that it was going to happen, what were you feeling?
We were notified quite a ways in advance. I mean, it was, I wouldn't say months in advance, but probably well, yeah, it had to been because we go on leave. We went on leave before we deployed, so it was a good couple months before we deployed. And we knew coming into the 512 when we stood up that we were going to be deploying soon. You know, it's just how long. So, like, leading up to it, we finally got, you know, the schedule that was like, all right, this is our road to war, and then here we go. We're getting ready to go on this time frame because they don't give you an exact date, but they're like, it's this time frame. So start getting your families prepared for it. Well, I wasn't married then, and I didn't even have a girlfriend then, like steady girlfriend. I've been with my wife on and off for like 9 years, but I didn't have like a steady support base of a spouse or anything. So I would go home, and I only live 5.5 hours from post. So like I would drive home on 4-day weekends where people couldn't do that just normally because they were from farther away. But I would go home and I'd be like, hey, Mom, it's coming up, you know, you better start getting prepared for it because I'm going to be gone for a year. I get to come home for 2 weeks in that year, but it's going to be a long time. And just building up to it, I just had to make sure all my bills were squared away, make sure that life still continues to go on even though you're going to be over there because they don't just say, yeah, you're going to war, free ticket, you know. Like, still got to make that truck payment, you know. You still got to make sure that life carries on and you're able to pay bills because, I mean, I was on my own, so I was like, Mom, hey, I need you to join my bank account, so that you can take over my bills when I'm not able to pay online or whatever. So we had to make sure that all of our, it's not just emotional, financially, deployments are really tough. Because if you're not just in line, soldiers can come back with nothing, if they aren't on top of that stuff, especially if they're in a place that they can't communicate all the time. So I made sure that everything was completely straight before I left, which made it really easy. Emotionally, my family's so tight-knit that they all got together. I had a huge going-away party. And they all got together, and it was a really good send-off. And emotionally, I think everybody, being as close as my family is, that there was that support for my mom and my sisters and everybody there was always somebody to talk to. So they were never alone on it, waiting for me to come back, which my mom was praying for me every day. Bless her heart, I know she was, and she told me that every day I talked to her. But she was supported, which was a lot easier in my situation. But I am her only son, so I know she was not too happy.
How was, you said you were on and off again with what's now your wife. What was your status, relationship-wise, right as you deployed? Was it still off, or?
Is she going to see this? This isn't going to be on the History Channel or anything, is it? No, before I deployed, my mindset was I'm getting ready to go to war for a year, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm coming back, because you don't. So I was going to have fun. I went out, and I had a lot of fun, and let your mind wander on that. But I drank a lot. Not necessarily right before we deployed, but it was in that year. I did drink a lot, to where people, my mom, she'd be like, "You aren't drinking again, are you?" And it's only the weekends. You call me on the weekends, so yeah, I'm drinking. It seemed like every single time I talked to her, I was drinking because she only called me on Saturday. Imagine that, right? So it made it look like I was an alcoholic. But my status was, I would always talk to her, Brittany Carol Vaughn. I talked to her on and off. I got together with her whenever she was 16 and I was 19. And Daddy didn't like that. But she turned she turned 17 and I turned 20. Or maybe I'm off on the years, I don't know. But I was way older than she was, and Dad didn't like that too much. So that's why we separated, part of the reason why we separated whenever we were younger. Because it wasn't that right time in our lives, right? So over the years, we had our separate relationships with other people for length of times, And that year before deployment, I was talking to her a lot. She had broken up with her previous relationship, and I didn't have my previous relationship because I ended it when I was away in basic. That's a whole nother ballgame. But we kind of got together. I told her about April or probably April or May, that I was going to marry her, whether she liked it or not. And she's like, "No, you're not. I'm never getting married, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. Yeah, watch." So she wouldn't even be my girlfriend. I kept asking her, "Hey, we should get back together." No. I like it how we are now. Okay. Didn't want to ever press the issue because I was getting ready to go to Iraq, So we got right up to that point. And I was like, "You know what? I'm not going to ask you anymore." I was like, "I know you're set in your ways." She's just as stubborn as I am, if not more. I was like, "I know you're set in your ways." I was like, "I'm not going to ask you again. Don't wait for me." I was like, "Because I'm going to Iraq for an entire year. There's no reason that you should wait on me for an entire year," which she probably wasn't ready to wait on me anyway. I didn't know. I didn't really care. I was just like, "Do your thing, though. I'm not even going to ask you. I don't even, I'm going away. It's been a great year, on and off. I'm going to deploy." The day I got in Kuwait City, or not Kuwait, yeah, it was Kuwait City. The day I got in Kuwait, I got on the phone and I called 3 people. I called my mom, I called my dad, and I called Brittany. And she was crying. I didn't want you to go. I want to be with you, you know. And I'm like, so it took me going all the way on the other side of the world for you to realize this. And she's like, yep. So I was like, well, okay. So we got back together while I was in Kuwait, and then a week after that I was in Iraq. Because we went to Kuwait first, and then we went up to Iraq. So my status with her was just on and off. And she wasn't really my girlfriend. And then the day I left was when it all sank in on her. And we've been attached to the hip ever since. So, I knew I was going to marry her. She didn't. Yeah. I told her. And we're married. So.
And now you were in Kuwait City. Now you're in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first impression of touching down in Iraq? What did it feel like? What did it smell like?
All right. So check this out. Nothing like you'd ever imagine. Okay, it's not like the movies where all of a sudden there's just bombs and stuff going off. You know, it's not like that. We flew in on a C-130 in the middle of the night. They had the little green lights on inside. It was really cool looking, but it was cold because you were up in the air, pretty high up, and it was cold, but it was warm because you're so close together. We were jammed in there, and you got all your gear. So like everything's on your front, you know, and you're uncomfortable, and you're in like net chairs and stuff, so nothing's comfortable. And they're like, strap in. Yeah, where's the straps? You're like this. You're not going anywhere. So you're sitting there like this, and you sleep. Basically, if you can't sleep, you're just staring at somebody who is sleeping. And so your best bet is just put your head down and just go to sleep. So I slept all the way from Kuwait into Kirkuk. However, you get awakened really quick whenever you fly in because it isn't just like, you know, Pan Am going down and, oh, yeah. No, it's straight down, and then you land. And sometimes they'll do the drop, and they'll do straight down, and then they'll flatten out, and then they'll go straight down again. So it's like a roller coaster ride coming in. And my staff sergeant, Sergeant Ekin, he would tell us all the stuff because it was his fourth or fifth deployment. So like he was ready for it, and he was on point. He was preparing us for everything. Every time something was getting ready to happen, he'd be like, all right, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we got to do to make it happen. Like, on point. When we flew in, he was like, here we go. Dropped down in, flew in, landed on the strip, and it was dark outside, so we couldn't really see anything because the windows, you can't get a seat, you know, window seat. And we get off the tarmac, and they're like, all right, go straight over to this bus. Or straight over this building. It's like a little gated-off building. And we're like, okay. So like we get over into this building, and they're like, hey, your bus is going to be here soon, so go and get your bags. Which your bags are all piled on a big pallet, so you don't know where it's at. So you got to make sure they're marked really good. Big mistake if you don't mark your bags. But we got our bags. We get in line. We're standing there waiting for this bus, and we're like, there's a bus in Iraq? Or at least I was thinking that. You know, I'm like, we going to school? You know, there's a bus in Iraq. So this bus comes up, and we get on the bus, and it's got windows, and I feel like I'm in an airline shuttle terminal, you know. And I'm like, we're in Iraq right now. And there's a bus with windows, and I'm looking out, and I'm like, what's that? And they're like, that's Kirkuk City. And it's like 100 meters away. It's on the other side of a wall. And I'm like, so, like, they're right there, and we're right here, and there's a wall. And nobody around the wall. And I'm thinking, this is really not what I expected. Because I expected, you know, big barbed wire fences with guns everywhere, you know, secured lockdown. No. There's barbed wire fences, you know, and walls and stuff, and towers. But my initial thought of it is that looks like a city. And it is. It was a city right on the other side of the wall. Part of FOB Warrior is in Kirkuk City. So it's like, it kind of goes around it. And it was just really weird because I figured we were going to be on like a little base out in the middle of nowhere. And no. So we got to our little tents. And as soon as we get in our tents, we get all like nestled in and we start getting our gear together. And this thing goes over this loudspeaker and it says, incoming, incoming, incoming. And we're like, what? And we've been trained for it. You know, you hear incoming, you hit the ground or you get out to a bunker. And we were all just like, we just got here. You know? So we all like take off out the tent to this concrete bunker. And we get over in the bunker and like some of us are in our underwear. they're like 5 seconds later, it's like all clear, all clear, all clear. No bomb, no boom, no nothing. And we're like, what just happened? We had been here for less than 20 minutes and we already got incoming alarms going off. And we went to sleep, woke up the next day, and we ended up getting separated from our company. Our company split off into 3 different sections of Iraq in its entirety. And my company sent us to Fob Warrior in Kirkuk. And my platoon was assigned to what they started up a KPOC unit, which that's an acronym, Kirkuk Police Crime Unit, Organized Crime Unit or something like that. But my squad got separated from them. They took my squad and we went to the Provincial Police Transition Team, which was totally separated per mission set. Like we ran totally different missions, and we actually lived in a concrete building where they had to stay in little chew type, they're called chews. They're little like trailers with, basically they're just like living trailers that the construction guys have out, whenever they do work around here. But our squad got to live in a concrete building. So when the incoming alarms would go off, we stayed in bed because we were in a concrete bunker where they had to go to we had it pretty, I'm not going to lie, we had it pretty good where we lived. It was a big concrete building. We felt pretty secure in it. So, but that's the initial. Okay.
As far as being in Iraq, being in a combat area, there are some times where you get to relax. What kind of things did you do for recreation?
We built stuff. I don't know. Some of the things we did was literally busy work just to keep us busy. My staff sergeant was a genius whenever it came to busy work, because idle hands are the devil's playground. Like, you sit around too long, you start thinking about home, you start thinking about just going crazy. Basically, you're just sitting there. So we just had to constantly, on our downtime, we would constantly do things to keep us busy. Some of the things we did was we literally painted the entire inside of the building that we were staying in. We built a deck on the back end of it that was like a 10 by 20 wooden deck that we got some wood from some of the, I would say it's a wood yard, but it's really not. It's like just a big pile of wood. We built a deck. We built a HESCO barrier fence, which are like big cloth-covered fences that we separate. You normally put dirt inside of them, but if you separate them, you can make them 4 panels wide. So we built a fence around the back end, around our deck, and then my staff sergeant kind of talked a local Iraqi into letting him borrow his, like a bobcat type deal, and pushed a bunch of gravel over in and flattened it out. So we had like the P pit, the Punisher training yard. We called it the jailhouse yard. And we built all that. We built I don't even know what they call them now. Like a sandbox, like a rock garden. We built a rock garden. Okay, so like we had soldiers out there one day that were covered in black paint because they were painting little pieces of gravel all day long, just dipping them in paint, right? We built it in the shape of the Punisher symbol, the Marvel comic, Punisher. That was our squad's P-pit missions symbol. And we built a rock garden. We had like out border was red, and then we had the big rock garden. And we had a big T-wall that we had painted up there with our names on it and stuff. Team Punisher, Kirkuk, 2010, 2011. Or, was it 10, 11? Yep, it was 10, 11. I forget sometimes because, But yeah, we had a big screen TV, and we had an Xbox, and we had Call of Duty tournaments on our downtime, which soldiers have got to have entertainment. And that was one of the things that we did a lot, because it got your mind off of the things going on during the main day. And people were like, you had a big screen TV in Iraq? Yeah, but don't act like we were spoiled, because we weren't. But on our downtime, we had a big screen TV, and we had a 40-cup coffee maker too. that we had sent over to us by a really nice woman named Myra. Yeah. But
was that typical when you were able to get back with the other platoons you had originally been separated from?
Mm-hmm.
Was their recreation time similar to yours? Were there disparities?
Sometimes, like what they've told us and what we know may differ. I don't know, but them being on the other FOBs, I don't really know what they did. I've heard some of them talk, but being separated, you are focused on your mission set and what you guys do, in your little area. You're like in your own little bubble. It's for the higher ups to deal with the differences or whatnot. But our squad, as opposed to our platoon, had a lot more, I would say, perks. It wasn't because of favorites or anything like that. It was because we were selected due to our, number one, our NCO strength was myself. I was just a corporal downrange. I wasn't a sergeant yet. I was a corporal, and we had Sergeant Richard Monkhouse, and we had Staff Sergeant Corey Edkin. And our NCO base, as opposed to some of the others, had been recognized to be able to handle such mission. I'm not saying that we're better than everybody, but we had been recognized during training, during that year leading up to deployment, that whenever time came down that they needed that specific squad for a mission, they came straight to Sergeant Edkin and was like, hey, we want your squad to do this because we know you can do it. So we were kind of entitled to make our living area as best as we could. And we did. Nothing that we had over there was just handed to us. We made it happen. Like, we had drinks and food because we went and got it. We met the right people. When we talked to the right people, we submitted the right paperwork, The TV, we did it the right way, We went through our chain of command, or the P-Pit's chain of command, and got that TV, all the paint to paint the walls and stuff. We made that stuff happen. We found that stuff, We went out, we made it happen. We constantly worked to improve our living area so that it wasn't so hard. You know what I mean? Like, that was what we did. We improved our living area so that our morale would stay up and so that we looked like, I guess, we were spoiled. But we worked for it. You know what I mean? It wasn't just handed to us. We were spoiled. We worked for it. We got everything we needed. So.
Well, a lot of soldiers have described their deployments, beginning in Vietnam, but it's been applied to Iraq and Afghanistan as being months of boredom punctuated by periods of great adrenaline rush or fear. What would you say to something like that?
To each his own. I know soldiers, and I've talked to soldiers like Kuwait. My best friend, he told me that those 18 months he was so bored, because he would have little missions and whatnot, but it was in Kuwait, non-combat zone at that time. My mission in Iraq, I don't ever remember being bored. We had over 270 missions in 365 days, and it was almost daily. Like every day we went outside the wire. And when we weren't outside the wire, we were preparing for the next day we were going outside the wire, or we were improving our living conditions. So our leadership, Sergeant Edkin, Sergeant Monkhouse, and myself, we made it to where we weren't bored. If you were bored, you went to sleep because you never knew when you had to wake up. So that's what I got to say about that. Like my mission set over in Iraq was not boring at all. We were constantly busy. So.
Describe going outside the wire as going into combat, or into a combat zone. Can you describe your first time going over the wire? Oh
yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. Because we loaded up. We were using MRAPs, which that's an acronym for mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle, and they're huge. They're like a tank on wheels, I guess you could say. They're just ginormous. It's like an armored dump truck. And you got guys in the back, and they got little windows to look out and a ramp that drops in the back. And then you got your driver and the commander, whoever's the truck commander. And we rolled out in 3 trucks. A lot of everybody else mainly rolled out in 4. But we rolled out in 3 because that's all we needed necessary for our mission. The first time outside the wire, we do right seat, left seat. Okay, so like basically you go out with the other guys that you're relieving, because you get a period of time there. It's called a rip cycle. It's where the guys that are getting ready to go home are teaching you your job whenever they leave. So you're like learning. It's a crash course in OJT, on the job training right then. So like the first day we did our training, we just drove around the fob. The second day we went outside the wire. So it was like right away. We got picked up for that mission set. As soon as we started RIP, we went outside the wire. We sat in the back of the trucks, and I remember going out the gate and looking around, and all I saw was just trash everywhere. Like, there's just trash lining the roads, cows eating trash, and I'm thinking, ew, I wouldn't want to drink that milk. And then, like, kids walking everywhere, raggedy little dogs walking everywhere, and Kirkuk City's very populated. So there was a lot of people, and we operated in the city. Probably 200 out of the 270 missions that we ran, we were inside the city, which is really close. And when you're talking a huge tank with wheels going down through these cities, it's a big vehicle, and everything's really tight, and you got a lot of pedestrian traffic. So like, our gunners would be up on top, and I remember looking out the window, and no joke, like seeing my first Iraqi face to face no farther than you are. And I'm like, this is insane. Because I was expecting, gunshots everywhere. And we were this close to these people. And now, how do I want to say this? We are trained to deal with people very close to our vehicles. Because there is no more, especially when you're working in a populated city like that, there is no more get away from my vehicle or I'm going to kill you. It's, sir, can you step away from my vehicle? If they're a non-combatant. But it's very difficult to tell. You know what I mean? Because they don't wear uniforms. So you don't know. So you want to keep them as far away as possible, but there were times where there were people literally right next to our vehicles. And you just have to have that trained eye. The gunner has to be on top looking, and you have to have that trained eye to recognize a threat from a bystander who's just trying to get to work or get some food, or you know what I mean? So I remember that first time outside the wire, we were going down through the middle of the city, and there were just people everywhere. And we went in through these little turnstiles and went to the Provincial Police Headquarters of Kirkuk. And we were going there. We were personal security for Lieutenant Colonel Hankinson. There was a bunch of field grade officers, and one captain, a lieutenant at the time, got promoted captain downrange. But we were their security for their key leader engagements with the higher echelons of the police in Kirkuk. So we were seeing, the high-ranking officials of Kirkuk's police and higher parties. I don't really know a lot of the names of them, but we were seeing those on a daily basis. Like, we were going there a lot and seeing them a lot. And that first time there, though, I got to shake hands with General Jamal, which was I don't know if he still is now. I haven't really been keeping up with it. But he was the Provincial Police Headquarters police chief. Like, he was the provincial chief of the entire Kirkuk province. And I shook his hand the first day I was outside the wire. And I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting. So immediately whenever I got to talk to my mom, I was like, hey, guess what I did? But that was my first time outside the wire. Coming back, I mean, as far as like describing the area, there's a lot of trash. It might just be something in our culture, but in the Kirkuk Iraqi culture, I watched people throw stuff on the ground like it was just nothing. Like littering, yeah, you get a fine for littering in Iraq, ain't gonna happen. But and it smelled horrible. I don't really know what the smell was. You could say it smelled like poop or oil burning or trash. I don't know what the smell was, but just a conglomeration of just all these rancid smells. I guess that's the best word I can use to describe it. It's just rank. And that was in Kirkuk. It didn't smell good in Kirkuk. If anybody gets offended from Kirkuk, because I have a lot of friends in Kirkuk. I did have a lot of friends in Kirkuk. If anybody gets offended by it, they know, because they know it smells. Okay? But it smelled pretty bad. And it smelled, on hotter days, it would smell worse. But it did get cold, so colder days were ideal. So, and wind, the wind blowing in your face and stuff, but I don't know.
You mentioned littering, but you also mentioned you had friends in Kirkuk. What were your perceptions of the Iraqis when you first landed? You said you saw one right away.
Yeah.
On your first
Well, we made eye contact. I was just like, wow, he's right there. I didn't have a biased opinion going into this war. Going on my deployment, I did not have a biased opinion. Growing up in my life, I have never been taught to judge people based on race, religion, sex, creed, whatever. And I have an awesome sister named Kayla. She's my only true sister by blood. I've got 7 sisters, but she's my only one true by my father and my mother. And when she was in high school, she came out of the closet that she was a lesbian. So naturally, me being 3 years younger than her, every time I would say faggot or that's gay, I would get a freaking backhand or I'd get hit upside the head, And she pretty much taught me tolerance and acceptability. So going over to Iraq, for me, I did not have any biased opinions towards Iraqis as a people or a culture or a religion, because there's so many different kinds of those things all in one area. Like Kirkuk is primarily 3 different cultures in one. They got the Turkmen, they got the Kurdish, and they got the Arabs. And they all live in the same city. They all speak a different language in the same city. And I don't want to say they disagree with each other, but they do. There's a lot of tensions between the 3. Not so much the Turkmens and the Kurds, but the Arabs and the Kurds, they do not get along. And I didn't know any of that until I got there. I kind of got some crash courses on it, but you don't know it until you interact with them. And so I didn't have any biased opinions going into it. The first time I got to talk to them, we used interpreters a lot. I got to meet my interpreters. I loved my interpreters. My interpreters weren't the ones that a lot of people would be like, oh, I hated them because they didn't never say anything right, or, because I've heard people have horror stories about interpreters, or interpreters that were actually insurgents, that just kind of got their wind in there, because that's happened several times in the past. But my interpreters, one of them was named McKay, and he was my favorite of all of them, I guess you could say. And every time I would talk to Iraqis, I would have him help me out. But he spoke Kurdish. Didn't speak Arabic too much. And he was a Kurd, so he didn't really like talking in Arabic. So I like to talk a lot, if you can't tell. So the first thing I wanted to do whenever I got boots on ground inside the PHQ, the police headquarters, was I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to talk to Iraqis. So I was like, let's go, interpreter. Okay, let's go. So I'm like, how are these guys doing? And it's all like, I can say, a good interpreter will never talk to you. They'll only talk to them, and you will talk to them. They will listen and they'll translate. You'll never even have to have them in a conversation like you want me. Tell him this. All right? So I would literally hold a conversation with an Iraqi, talking to the Iraqi, and him standing next to me, saying it right after I'm saying it. So I never had to be like, hey, tell him, or make him do this, or have him do this, ask him this. It was all just straight up talking. Not to mention, gentlemen, we had been there for over 10 years. So it was rare to find one that didn't know any English, because you get a culture that's there for 10 years, they're gonna pick up on a lot of it. Granted, it might be Eminem or MC Hammer or Michael Jackson, and talking about just random stuff, or hello, you doing good, whatever. But I interacted with Iraqis on a daily basis. The whole handshake, hug, kiss thing, every day. I can't believe that I did that and made it back in one piece. Because I was with them every single day. The interaction with the Iraqi culture, and I say Iraqi culture because there's three that I dealt with primarily, is if you go into it biased, you're gonna not get anything out of it. What I got out of it is I met a lot of people, and I contribute the interaction that myself, including my team and my squad, did while we were there to the reason that we were so safe while we were there and that we made it back in one piece. Because we didn't piss them off. We didn't go in there acting like the angry American. We didn't go in there acting like the, like we were going to take over everything. We went in there and we talked to them. And we asked what we could do to make them better. We asked if they needed training. We trained them. We did weapons training with them. We did medical training with them. And we organized it all to where they came to the FOB and we trained them. And our interpersonal reactions with them is why I contribute that we never got in a combat engagement with Iraqis while we were there. So my story on my deployment, I didn't take a round. I didn't have bullets whizzing over my head. I had one hit a window of a truck that I was sitting in, but it happened, and I didn't even know it happened until I got to where I was going. I was like, oh, there's a bullet hole in the window, And we had some close calls, but they didn't happen. I don't feel that they happened because we were a target for them. I think they just happened on random events. Just like incoming, indirect fire. We did have an IED set up on a route we were on, but the Iraqi army had found it before we got there. Maybe they did it so that we would think they look good. Maybe they found it because they legitimately found it, but they found it before it went off, and that's all we cared about. And we went around that, got away from that one, and I really do feel that everything that happened in our deployment happened because we interacted with them so well. So, not all Iraqis are bad. They're just like Americans. You don't piss them off. And so, that's my opinion on it.
Now, a large part of Iraqi culture and culture in the Middle East in general is Islam and Islamic customs.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you weren't very versed in ethnic disagreements between the Kurds and the Arabs,
Mm-hmm.
but what was your knowledge of Islam and Islamic culture before making it over there?
Well, we were trained on, we went over Sharia law. We knew what Sharia law was and what it entails. We knew the holidays that the Muslim religion, Islam, celebrates, what it has led to in past events. So like during these certain time periods there was a spike in activity, or during these time periods there was a decline in activity, stuff like that. We were briefed on the different holidays like Eid, Ramadan. As far as their laws, the Iraqi law system is way different than ours. Way different. Honor killings. We went to the courthouse at least once a week, where I would have a group of guys and go down to the courthouse, and there was a guy murdered right outside the courthouse who was going to stand trial in an Iraqi court. He was murdered by another guy in an honor killing, and when we found out, or we asked them what they did with the guy, they let him go because it was an honor killing. He had killed from their tribe or their group of people, so that it was an honor killing for him to go back and kill him. That wouldn't fly in New York City. Just because it's justified doesn't mean you can just go and kill somebody. There's a court system for a reason. If it entailed any religion involved with it, I don't know. But the honor killings is a religious sect of it. So as far as the religion go, the prayer, like prayer times, call for prayers, I thought those were really interesting because they come out over these big loudspeakers all across the city. So it's so loud, and you can just hear it. And it's every day. I forget what time it goes off, but it goes off like twice a day or something. And everybody who's a practicing Muslim whips out a prayer rug and gets down and on their knees and they pray. Whether they're at work, whether they're driving their car, whether no matter where they're at, that's what they do. And it was interesting. It was like I stared at it at first, because it's like you see something you don't see every day. You want to look at it and you just want to study it. So I would study it a lot. And I'd be like, why do some of them do it differently? Because some people would take their shoes off, some people wouldn't. Some people would be on duty as a police officer. The Kirkuk police, they'd do it with an AK in their hand, And the call to prayers, like, obviously I don't know what they're saying because it's in Arabic. But it's just really, to me, it's eerie at times. Because a lot of times things would happen right following that. But I remember one time I was down on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse in the city on security, and there's people all around. And that prayer call went off, and it sounded like it was from me to you. And it just seemed like the busyness of the city just went dead silent, and all you could hear was that prayer call. And that was probably my heightened sense. Like, I was just like, that was like my peak. It scared the living crap out of me. Because I so thought that I was not going to leave that day. But I don't know. The religious part of it, I don't know. It's just it's a tolerance of other religions. I don't know the religion. And whenever people, I would talk to the Iraqis about it, actually, and I never wanted to talk to Iraqis about it because you don't talk to them about religion or that because you never know who you're going to piss off, politics and religion. But I would talk to them occasionally, and they would ask me, "Are you Christian?" They would do the cross, and I'd be like, "I am, but I'm not a practicing one." And they'd be like, "Well, what's that mean?" I'd be like, "Well, I don't really go to church, but I believe in a higher power." And they'd be like, "Well, why don't you become a Muslim?" And I'd be like, "Well, I don't know. I could, I guess, because I don't know." I was like, I don't know what religion I am. I'm 27 years old, and I've never read the Bible. I've never read the Quran. I don't know which one's right. You know what I mean? It's about faith. It's about your upbringing and stuff like that. And I would talk to them about it and try to learn stuff about their religion. And it's not really that much different, other than the darker side of it, I guess you could say. That every religion has a darker side. You can't just say that all one religion's right, because I'm only 27 and I don't know all the religions in the world. How do I know, which one's right or wrong? So that was my view on religions going into it. I just wanted to kind of observe it. I didn't want to study it, but I wanted to just watch it happen, because it's just different,
You mentioned earlier you had a mid-tour leave. You had the 2 weeks off. How many months were you into your deployment before you got to go?
9 months. I was the last one to go. So I got to watch everybody leave and come home all happy. And there I was, 9 months in, going crazy. And I was saying some off-the-wall stuff, and they're like, "You need to go home." And I'm like, "I know. I'm out the door."
What was it like for you to go home for 2 weeks?
Oh, God. Well, I kind of took the shaft on it, really, because I got to go home, but I got to go home for Thanksgiving, which was really, really cool. But everybody was telling me whenever they would go home, I'd be like, "So how was it?" And they'd be like, "Oh, it was one day to Kuwait, one day I was home. I was there in 2 days." No, not this guy. I was in Kuwait for 5 days at Ali Al Salim Airport, going home. I had to get on 2 planes going down there, and then it's a 16, 18-hour trip. I don't know. It's a long freaking flight, but you got to stop in Europe, in either Ireland or Germany or wherever, and you get to stretch your legs a little bit, maybe have a layover. I had a layover. It was like a 4-hour layover. So and I hate sitting still. If you haven't noticed, I'm moving around a lot. I'm really, So sitting on an airplane with going home was different than coming back to Iraq. Going home, you're sitting on an airplane with about the big plane, 500 people. I don't know how much of freaking those airplanes hold, but there's a lot of people, and they all smell. Because we've all been sitting in Kuwait waiting to go home in the same uniform because it's the nicest uniform we got. And we all smell like a bathhouse. And I don't know. I don't really remember the flight a whole lot. I just know that it stunk, and I tried to sleep. They did play movies a lot, but I don't know. I don't even remember what movies they were. I just remember hitting the ground in Georgia. That was awesome. Because we hit the ground, and I'm like, yeah! And nobody around me says anything, and I'm like, am I the only one excited to be home? And then, like, the plane comes to a stop, and they're all like, yeah! And I'm like, oh, I had to wait for it. Like, I was happy that we just landed. They were happy when the plane stopped, and I don't know, that was just a funny moment on my little return trip. But when we got off the plane, we came through the terminal, and there were a lot of people in the terminal in uniform, but there was a lot of people that would, clap for you or whatnot, or shake your hand as you went by, because everybody knows, that was one of the main hubs. So everybody knew we were coming in. And then I had to get on a little pack of gun plane to go back to Indianapolis, And there was only one other soldier with me when we got on our little plane to go home. So, like, the trip back, it was just anticipation. But I was happy because I didn't have my vest on, I didn't have my weapon. I was on my way home, all I had was my helmet, and I got to turn that in too when we got on the nice plane, the big plane. So, like, all I had was my bag, my clothes, and my body odor. And I was just, and what was real funny is I got to talk to my mom in Georgia whenever I landed, and Brittany was going to pick me up. She was just my girlfriend at the time. She was going to pick me up, so I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, are you going to the airport? And she's like, no. I was like, well, that's okay, because I want Brittany to pick me up. I'll just see you later. I'm going to hang out with her. And she's like, okay. So I called Brittany, and I was like, hey, Britt, I know you haven't seen me for 9 months, and you're really excited. But when we get home, the first thing I'm doing before we sit down is I'm getting a shower, because you are not even going to want to hug me when I get off that plane. It didn't stop her, I mean, 5 days of body odor, and she still hugged me for an hour. I got pictures of that day. That was fun. But, I was the only one. I was like one of 3 people in the terminal in Indianapolis, too. I forget what time it was. But I didn't have any luggage. I just had my carry-on. So, like, I went straight down, and there was nobody in the terminal. And I see my little girlfriend walking across there. I'm like, yes! Running across. It was like a movie moment, It's pretty cool. And her mom was with her, and she was in the background taking pictures and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
So what did you do during the mid-tour leave? Like, what did you accomplish?
I took my girlfriend to Fort Myers Beach, Florida, for a week. My mom was not really upset about it. She was, but she wasn't, because it was a week. I only had 2 weeks at home. The way I figured it is I needed some vacation time, and if I was at home for the entire 2 weeks, it would be constant. So I had planned it out before I went home. We got our plane tickets and everything, and I was going to take her to Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And so we went for the first week. Like, that's what sucked. It's like I came on all those planes to get over here, and then a couple days later I was on another plane going again. But that was like a 4-hour flight, whoop-de-doo. But we went to Fort Myers Beach, Florida for the first week, and it was perfect. It was literally something out of a movie. Like, the weather was perfect the entire time. My grandpa, Jeep Pell, he was down there waiting for us, so we didn't even get a taxi or nothing. Like, he was at the airport waiting to pick us up and take us to the house. And the place we stayed was right on the beach, beachfront property. And literally, I had not a care in the world. She had not a care in the world, and that made me happy. And nobody bothered me. We hung out for an entire week on the beach. What better place to be after you come back from a place with nothing but sand? You go to the beach. But it was different because Iraq was a lot of dirt, not really sand. But and then we came home, and for that second week, that's when I made the rounds. I went around, saw as many people as I possibly could. And then I had another big party. But it was called Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was awesome because I got to spend it at home. And my mom was really happy about that, really relieved. So
What about going back?
going back was tough because I'd already lasted 9 months. So I knew it was only going to be a couple more months, and I was going to be, because by the time I got back there, rip cycle for the new guys coming in for us was, about a couple weeks. So, like, I was like, by the time I get back there, I'm going to be packing up, getting ready to get out of there. So, no big deal. This will be a knockout. Yeah, well, the wife took me to the airport, fiance or girlfriend at the time. She didn't want to let me go, of course, and I didn't really want to go. But I met back up with the other soldiers that went to Indianapolis with me, and it was a female captain. She was really nice. And we got on the plane, and it was all just thought, because you can't do anything about it. You're going back. So it's all just a battle in your mind of, well, that's over. Let's get back to work. What do I got to do next? So it was all the process of getting my gear back whenever I got to Kuwait, getting there, getting picked up at the right time, being at the right place, get on the right plane and everything, and then getting off the plane, going on mission the next morning, But I was stuck in Kuwait for another 4 days coming back, so I had the worst transition times, I guess, for my little company, or for my little squad. But the transition back was just all mental. It was all like preparation, like that's vacation time's over, back to work. Because I literally, the day I got back, the next day I was on mission. I had the rest of the day to sleep, and then I was on mission the next day. So didn't really have much time to think about it other than time to go back to work and collect a paycheck. So
When the U.S. Army started doing deployments instead of total war enlistments like they had in the first two world wars, soldiers described short-timer syndrome, that towards the end of a deployment or a tour of duty, you would start to just anxiously count down the days and get really nervous when that last day was coming.
Complacency, yeah.
Or, did you experience something similar, like where the last day nothing can happen, it's my last day in Iraq?
The countdown started the day we landed in Iraq, and we had it written on a dry erase board. So, yes, it does, it's very anticipatory. Like, as soon as you get there, you're ready to go home, you know what I mean? You don't, but whenever I got back from R&R, mine was so late in the period that, like, 9 months in, I got back from my vacation, it didn't really affect me that much. I wasn't really counting down too much because it was only like 3 months and I was coming back, so I was like, whatever. But, like, for the guys, you could feel it, and my team and the rest of the squad, you could feel the almost the I don't give a shit factor, because there were times there towards the end where you would always train, you're always trained. Don't get complacent, because as soon as you let your guard down, that's when you're most vulnerable. Like, they watch. Your enemy watches you. But I'm not going to lie, there was some times when I went out on mission and I was standing there with my rifle and I was just like, man, I hope somebody tries something right now. Just to get over the complacency factor, because nobody had done anything to us, because we were always on point. Like, we were always prepared, and we were always acting. If we didn't know our job, we at least looked like we knew our job, because that's what I, credit our successful missions for, is like, there towards the end, I was just like, if it's going to happen, freaking let it happen. I was just ready for it, I was almost like anxious for it. So I never really let my guard down. It almost went up, and all the guys kind of went up too. We had a lot of stuff happen towards the end too with the new crew that came in, the new command team that came over for our pit team. They put us in a lot of weird positions. And by what I mean, like, weird positions is like uneasy positions while we were there. And we weren't too fond of it, but, we had to do what we had to do. And that was our NCOs. As NCOs, we were like, hey, look, guys, this stuff may seem a little hairy. This is what you're trained for. If it happens, it happens. You do what you're trained for. You get out there and do it. So, we get out there and we do it. And towards the end, I think it was more up than down. So, and you want me to tell you what happened a couple days before we left? So, like, a couple days before we left, we were like, all right, we're out the door. We're leaving tomorrow. We're looking out in the city, and we feel it. Boom. We're like, what was that? You know, we look out and there's a big mushroom cloud coming up the city. Not a nuclear bomb, but IEDs and VBIDs, they make a mushroom-style cloud that comes up really high. And the first one, I didn't see the first one. I felt the first one, and I was like, "Well, that was freaking close." Like, does EOD maybe have a controlled detonation going on, or what's going on with that? We look out, and there's that big cloud. 4 or 5 seconds later, another one goes off. And you see the cloud first, and then you feel it, and you're like, "Wow, that's two right next to each other." And then a third one went off, and we're like, "Oh God, like we're leaving tomorrow." And like, that's where we were yesterday. You know, we were at the Megdad IP station, and that's where that stuff happened. There was a VBED went off. All the first responders got there, and another one went off. And then they had more first responders, and then another one went off. You know, cars loaded with bombs. And we were there the day before that. And so that was just like a whew moment, I guess you could say. So as far as complacency, my squad, no.
Who were the first responders in that case? Were they all Iraqis?
All Iraqis. Mm-hmm.
Any people that you knew?
Well, yeah, they responded. The ones I knew responded to that. None of them that I knew were injured in it, or at least none of the ones that I knew like personally by name or saw on a daily basis. None of them were injured in it. That happened a couple months ago. Most of the ones I knew and interacted with on a daily basis, a suicide bomber walked in the front door of there was a VBED that blew a hole in the gate of the IP station, the provincial headquarters, where we were almost every single day. And the this is what the report had said, that the suicide bomber had walked through the hole that was created and walked into the front door and detonated his suicide vest, which that's where all my interacting Iraqi partners worked. And one of them, Major Ibrahim, he took it on that one. So a lot of the guys that I knew, they don't exist anymore. So where that interaction that was so good that we got, and that trust that was built up between Americans and Iraqis during that little period in that little place, it can never be passed on because it was just wiped off the face of the earth. So then you got to start over again. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the big picture, I guess you could say. Is like you can't keep killing people. The stories die out. You know what I mean? It makes all your work that you work so hard on doing just go out the door, and it freaking pisses me off. You know, because we did a lot of good over there, and it just mean people. You know, I can't think of any nice way to say it.
How did so after your deployment and you were back stateside, how did you transition to? It was different than your mid-tour leave because you didn't have to be right back. How did you transition to being at home?
I got to go on 2 weeks of leave right after we got back, and I just every little thing that you take for granted here that you can't have over there, like every little, like you notice it as soon as you get over there, and you're just like, you can't go down and have a McDonald's, you know, you can't go through a drive-through, and every little thing. Grocery store lines. I was on my first 2 weeks of leave, and I was in line at a grocery store. Didn't really have a timeline or whatever, and I'm like, I got like a carton of eggs, maybe some milk or something. I'm getting groceries from my mom, and this woman is in front of me with a cart full of stuff, just bitching constantly. They need to open another lane. They need to do this. And I was just like, shut up. Like, I didn't say it, but I was just thinking that. I'm like, are you that important? That, like, you need to make a scene like this? Or, like, is it that crucial that you can't stand there for an extra 5 minutes while that other person in front of you is checking out? You know, just the little things that you're just like, just calm down. Take a breather. Look at where you're at. Look at where you're at. There's nothing going to hurt you here, you know? And the whole deployment factor is there's always something around you that could hurt you. And you don't know when, you don't know why, you don't know how, you don't know where. But being back stateside, it's just like, think about it, you know? There's places in this country that there's things around you that can hurt you. but a grocery store line is not one of them. You know, and that's the way I was thinking. And I'm sorry to people who have been hurt in a grocery store line, but
how was PTSD in terms of your unit? Have you heard stories of other men in your unit, men or women, that have had trouble transitioning back to the States?
There's always a couple, you know, and like we were talking about last night, it's all to each, you know, it's to each his own. It's all on how a person takes things and how they deal with it. Their resilience, you know, it's soldiers are trained to be resilient. They can bounce back. They can cope with timelines. They can cope with stress. However, soldiers are also people. You know, we're citizen soldiers. You know, we're people. We have feelings. We have emotions. And certain events that took place downrange have different effects on people. I feel that people can get PTSD from doing nothing. Because the downtime, if you do nothing and you sit and all you have to do is just think, you can drive yourself crazy, you know? And as far as my unit with PTSD, I don't think there was a whole lot of cases of PTSD for my unit. But I think there's a lot of underlying ones. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize that just hasn't came out yet. And I don't think it's from, you know, their buddy getting blown up or anything like that. I think it has to do with, like, things that they witnessed, like saw, visuals, heard about, you know, just the thought process, just being away for that long, you know, I don't know. I think it just has different effects on people. I think there's a lot of underlying issues that may or may not come out. You never know. And it's just all on how people deal with it. It's all on how people deal with it. So,
when you garrisoned back to the States, you were allowed to stay with your unit. You maintained contact. Do you think that helped you?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of being
absolutely.
Everything?
Absolutely. There's one of them, I think just one, was my soldier. One of the other guys doing an interview here today, Special Schaefer. He was my soldier downrange in Iraq. And we talk about the most random stuff, like, because you're with those guys for a year. You know what they smell like. You know what I mean? Like, you know what they ate the night prior because of how they smell. And, like, you know them like the back of your hand. And whenever you get back here, you like to hang out with them because you were with them for so long. Yeah, you need time away, but they talk about the same things you know. You went through that same experience. Or you don't have to stop and explain something. Like, I'll have a conversation with my wife, and she'll be like, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You had to be there for that, you know." But they split us up when we got back. They actually split us up. We stayed in the same company, but they jumbled us all around, which I think was a big mistake. Hopefully they watch this. I think it was a big mistake because I think that they need to keep them together longer. They needed to keep us together longer so we could transition a little better and it wasn't just so... Because it was like a big pop when we got back. They jumbled us around, and I found myself going to different platoons and talking to my guys because I wanted to talk to them. And I knew them. I already knew them. What would be the point in trying to learn new guys right away? I knew them like the back of my hand. So that, in my opinion, is definitely, you know, being together like that, you got to stay in contact. Got to stay in contact. I'll never forget these guys. I might forget the names, but I'll never forget them. So...
So in terms of contact, you're still on base with them, so you can interact on a person-to-person basis. Is there any other means that you guys have, like do you get together? It's only been a year, so it's not like a reunion, I'm sure, but...
No, yeah, because we only got back in February, and as far as I'm tracking, all of us from our squad are still in the same group, or like we're all on Fort Leonard Wood still. I know a lot of them are going to Korea, possibly, and then, you know, as you're here for longer, everybody will start branching off. Needs of the Army, re-enlistments, and wherever ETS is getting out, you know. And eventually, you know, we'll all separate. And to tell you the truth, when it comes to reunions aren't that possible when you're in the Army, because you can't really plan that far ahead, you know, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know where you're going to be. And so I think a reunion for us guys would be more practical 20, 30 years down the road. We all get back together or whatnot. Because if we tried to do it every year, there's no way we could all be at one place at the same time. I don't think it would ever happen. If it did, it'd be cool, but I just don't think it'd be able to be coordinated with how we're all involved in the Army and we're all kind of separated. So.
All right, well, now we cover your deployment, maybe bringing it back to more current politics. What are your feelings on the feasibility of the stand down or the demobilization in Iraq coming up here at the end of the year?
I think it stems out. I think it would be good. And by what I mean by good, all right, I think it would be good, and I think it would be bad, all right, because there's a opposite side to every story. There's always two sides. There could also be 4 or 5 sides, but there's always 2 sides minimum. So like, I think the drawdown is feasible. I think if we pulled out of Iraq, that the Iraqi government or the Iraqi culture would still survive. They would survive. Would it be to our expectations as Americans? I can't speak for that, but would it be for my expectations on what I feel that their country should do? No. I think that there's too much. It's just different. It's just different over there. There's no way that we can. They're not America. You know what I mean? Iraq is not America. And I know a lot of Iraqis that loved us being there. Absolutely loved us being there. Most of the Kurds love us being there. But does that mean we should stay there? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think it has to. I don't know everything. I don't know why we're, you know, I don't know what the officials are doing. I don't know what the government's, you know what I mean? So like, my opinion is basically just my opinion. It doesn't have any real support to it. So I can't really justify it. You know what I mean? Would I go back? Yeah. Do we need to be there? I don't know. In some sense, yeah, to keep some order, but they can, I mean, they've been around for longer than we have. Their civilization has been around way longer than ours, you know. May not be just like ours, but it's just different. I don't know. I don't really have a straight up answer for you on that one.
Okay. Well, more recently, I know you mentioned your sister's sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
The don't ask, don't tell policy has been repealed.
Mm-hmm.
It's now okay to openly serve as a homosexual in the military. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I have 2 gay sisters, actually. One's my half-sister and one's my real sister. And I have several family members who are gay. And I know a lot of gay people. And I knew them all before I got in the military. So that helped out a lot whenever it comes to being able to provide an opinion about it. Because whenever they told me that they were thinking about repealing the don't ask, don't tell policy, I was like, okay, no change. Because there's always been homosexuals in the Army. But now all it is just whether or not you can say it or can get kicked out, or whether you say it and not get kicked out. That's the only difference. And my opinion of it is, it's to each his own. If somebody wants to be gay, they're gay. Nobody cares. Or nobody should care. And nobody should judge them on it. The problem that I think, and I hear a lot from my soldiers, is the way it's approached. Because I hear a lot of homophobic people talk about, I don't want a guy hitting on me. Well, if you're not gay, then who cares? You know what I mean? Tell them you're not interested. But they just don't want that uncomfortability feeling. You know what I mean? Some people just don't know how to deal with it because they've never been exposed to it before. It's the same way with segregation, you know, and just people are afraid of what they don't know, you know. And I don't, the only thing that I wanted, me being in the military, I'm straight, heterosexual. The only thing that I think that the don't ask, don't tell policy repeal should fall on is I don't feel that it should be based off of somebody who's not in the military. Because I remember seeing on TV and they were like, well, these people voted for this, or it takes this many votes or whatnot. And they aren't even serving. And I think that it should be a poll based on service members. Because it's the Army. It's my Army. It's every soldier's Army. And I don't feel that a civilian should have the authority to tell the Army what to do. I think if they were going to repeal it, they should do it the right way and have the military repeal it. I don't know. I guess I would say, like, make it known that it's the military doing it and not, like, the government, like the other echelons, you know, the other civilians or the gays that aren't in the military voting on it. They're not even in the military. Why do they care? You know what I mean? But then they're like, oh, it's because it's for all gays. And okay, I can see where they're coming from. I think that it just gets so... I really hate how people, I don't really say hate, but I really dislike how people make huge deals out of something that shouldn't be that huge of a deal, but it is because of people are afraid of the, you know, what they don't know, you know, and I don't know. I just get really like, okay, yeah. My opinion on it is that I really just, it doesn't bother me. I don't care.
Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you'd like to go back to and expand upon, or anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Not really. I just wish that media would tell the truth. And I wish that people would tell the truth. Because the truth, it defines who you are. And it only makes things better, okay, over time. Because, like, I remember seeing stuff on television, and I was like, it can't be all that bad. And I never liked watching the news because it was always bad stuff, right and left. It's always bad stuff. And I just wish that people would focus more on good things. Because, I don't know, we're never going to run out of, you know, bad things. Bad things always happen. But the good things, if you thrive on the good things, then I think that we'll do all right. So.
Well, Sergeant Hayes, on behalf of myself and Ball State University, I want to thank you for taking part in the Cantigny Oral History Project. And on behalf of myself and my family, thank you for your service and your continued service.
I appreciate that. Thank you.